is one of our elders of the church. He's a fairly young guy. You gonna tell him how we met? You can? Excited? Gabriel was friends of mine from Facebook, and he was coming down to see his family down in Dallas. I think it was 2017? 2017. So I said, well, why don't you come over? I'll get you guys lunch, buy you guys lunch. So I didn't expect him to take up the offer. He came down, we went over to lunch in Marshall, started talking to him, and I realized, hey, we could use you guys over here. And one thing led to another. By July, we helped them move down, or June, we helped them move down. And you'll hear a story.
More people than I was expecting. Or my voice doesn't go out like it did in history. That which is awkward. All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the people here. Father, you know how unworthy I feel to be here, but I pray first for your forgiveness of my sins and all of ours, and that someone will be touched and drawn closer to you, and maybe even saved. In your name, amen. So that summer that the pastor helped us drive down, he told me while we were in the moving truck, he said, don't tell anyone your story. I want you to do this in Transformed last year. And then he forgot, which I was fine with. But he remembered this year. And I've been preaching for years, but I'm still nervous tonight. But anyway, I was born October 5th, 1983, into a very unstable home. I was born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, about probably 6 hours or so away from here. And it just was not a healthy, functional, stable family. Both my parents were into the drug and alcohol scene. Shortly after I was born, we moved to Hobbs, New Mexico. Now, my mom told me, she doesn't tell me anything anymore, pardon my dark humor, that when she was pregnant with me, she was sitting in church one day, and then all of a sudden this light surrounded her. Nothing said, no words, but then it was gone, and she was back in church. Sounds kind of weird, I know, but that's what happened. Now, my mom was raised in church, my dad was not, but he came to the Adventist faith because he wanted to disprove the Sabbath. So he kept studying, and he studied it, and he says, this can't be, I'm going to prove this wrong, and he found all the Bible verses, and he says, can't fight it anymore, this is the truth. But they were still very broken people. And one thing, if you'll notice, is that broken parents make broken children. You cannot make healthy children if you don't have anything healthy to give. As I mentioned, my parents did drugs and alcohol. They would be in their bedroom doing cocaine and stuff like that, and while the kids were out in the hallway. And so eventually it led to arguing, it led to fighting, and my parents got into a physical fight one night. And they split up after that. I remember hearing the noises when I was a young child, before I was 4 years old. They divorced when I was 4. And throughout my childhood, I was persuaded to be biased against my dad. My mom hated him, and that's just unfortunately what happened. That said, I don't say that to talk down about her, because she loved us fiercely. She loved us deeply, and she probably did the best that she could. She herself came from a broken home. My dad did not come from a broken home, but he came from an abusive home. And so by the time they got to me, well, they had already had 2 children before me, and the pattern just continued. So, by the middle part of my early childhood, from probably about 4 to 8 years old, we were dirt poor. And I mean dirt poor, like we had beans and potatoes for every, that kind of poor. We relied on other people to bring us things. My mom would take toilet paper from her job. That's how poor we were. Cereal, stuff we take for granted now, cereal was a treat for us, and it was a rare treat. Eventually, they both got sober. My mom kind of had to as a single mom. My dad got sober by the year of 1991. And so my mom chose to stop that cycle of drugs and alcohol. And so she raised us from the point when I was about 6 years old in the Adventist church. Now, one of my favorite singers, his name is Steve Green, and I love the way he says it, talking about his own story. He grew up in the Christian church, but he had just enough of it to be inoculated against the real thing. Do you know what I mean by that? He grew up with the forms. He did not have that relationship with Jesus, the real thing, until he was mid-20s. And so that's kind of how I grew up. I went to public school for kindergarten, and after that I was kind of in between public and Adventist school from 1st until 8th grade. At 9 years old, I was baptized. I didn't really understand why. I hadn't studied the beliefs or anything like that. I did know that I loved God, and I wanted to serve Him. At 9, 10 years old, I was happy to be involved in church, to be doing scripture reading and stuff like that. And kind of how I was raised, and to this day, if I'm not at church, I want to be involved. I don't want to be just a pew warmer. And when I was about 10 years old, my mom started dating who would become my stepdad and my legal dad. And his name was Charles, but he went by Mike because his middle name was Michael. They got married September 8, 1994, and I will be eternally grateful for this man because even though he wasn't my biological father, it was because of him I learned a lot about how to be a husband and a father today. It was because of him, largely because of him, that is probably the reason that I'm in the church today. Statistically speaking, Christian parents, if the father is not in the picture, or if the father's not a Christian himself, statistics are against those kids staying in the church. Most of them leave. And so I'm very grateful to have been raised in the Adventist church and to have an Adventist father figure in my life. Now, for a little bit of a humor spot, when they were dating, he somehow thought we were Mormon. And he called my mom and he says, "I love you, but I can't be a Mormon." And she says, "What? We're not Mormon." And so he was very, very relieved. Now, he was in the Army, but he was towards the end of his military career. And so when they got married, we moved to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. If you've ever been to Kansas, it's very flat and boring. But when he retired from the Army, we moved to West Texas, to San Angelo. And he finished his college degree there in computer science. And after that, we moved to Dallas. Now, the schools in Dallas I was not a big fan of, the public schools anyway. In San Angelo, I loved the public school there. But when we moved to Dallas, they were very strict with the bells, the backpacks, and I just didn't like it. And so I made a PowerPoint presentation to try and convince my parents to put me back in Adventist school. I just didn't like the public school there. And so they put me in what was then known as Dallas Junior Academy. Now, that has since become Dallas Christian Academy, or DCA. And I went there from the middle of 8th grade to all of 9th grade. However, that school turned out to be not a very good fit. I was bullied by some of the rich kids there, and my parents just had enough. And they took me from there and put me into Richardson Adventist School. And that has since become North Dallas Adventist Academy. And it is obviously no longer at the Richardson Church. So I should back up a little bit and say that we moved to Dallas in January of 1998. And 6 months later, I met the woman who would eventually become my wife. So we've known each other for 21 and a half years. And so almost from the beginning, I had a crush on this beautiful creature. And so we talked, we became friends. At the time, she had no interest in ever getting married, so dating in Adventist was just not on the table for her. And so that didn't work out. In fact, I remember telling her one day that, hey, by the way, I have a crush on you. Now, it was bad timing on my part because another guy had just broken up with her, and she's like, yeah, I'm not interested. I tend to have bad timing in my life. And so, while I was at DJA, Dallas Junior Academy, my 9th grade year, my homeroom teacher, Mr. Leon Hill, he had us do a project. And this project was, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. I'm only in 9th grade. And so my mom, she was a teacher's assistant there that year, and so she was driving us to school, and I was thinking, well, what do I want to do for this project? My stepdad was a software engineer, so I love computers too, so let's do something with that. And I was trying to think of other ideas, but after every idea I thought of, I felt a strong impression, no, be an evangelist. And that's when I first felt the call to ministry, and from that point on, I dedicated my education to that end. So, as I said, after that I moved on to Richardson Adventist School, then after that, I went to Valley Grande Academy, depending on how you want to say it. And I went there for my junior and senior year, and my parents sent me there because they believed in my calling to the ministry. Otherwise, their plan was to just send me to a local public school there where we lived in Garland, Texas, which I was so glad that they didn't send me there because I don't like big schools. And that school was huge. My brother graduated from there, and the size of the graduation was incredible. But it was during my junior year at VGA that I had one of my first crises, I don't know, of faith. And I had gotten to a point, I don't know why, I don't remember what the trigger was, but I had gotten to a point where I was almost ready just to completely give up on God. I just was not feeling it anymore at all. And so I'm like, what do? I talked to my parents, and my mom said, no, please don't give up. And I talked to the assistant boys dean that year, and that didn't really help. I loved the guy, but that conversation just didn't help. And then I talked to my English teacher. Her name was Miss Creek. She has since married, so her name has changed, but she told me something very important that I've carried with me today, almost 20 years later. And that is that it is in these times we have to have faith. It's in these times we have to choose to believe. Belief is not a feeling, it's a choice. And so that has helped me so many times over the years, because as you'll notice, that has been a recurring theme. And I'll mention it a few more times. But God, in His mercy, and praise Him, He has, over the years, has shown me scriptures and passages from the Spirit of Prophecy to help me combat that struggle. I graduated from high school in 2003 at the age of 19 years old. I started school late as a young child, so I was nearly 20 years old by the time I finished high school. After that, I went on to Southwestern Adventist University. And here I did have a lot of fun. I learned a lot of things. I majored in theology with a required minor in biblical languages. And to this day, I still love studying the Greek and the Hebrew. Now, the irony of this point in my life is I still did not really have a strong relationship with God. I had felt the call to ministry, I was pursuing that, but I didn't really have a consistent, strong relationship. There were large chunks of time where I didn't talk to God or study at all. And so you can imagine how that may have worked. Greek, as I said, was one of my favorite classes. My professor at that point was Pastor Bill Kilgore, and he has since retired, but he left a huge mark on my life. I learned a lot of things from him. He is one of the big reasons why I still love to study the Greek, especially when I'm preparing a sermon. Now, this was during this time that I also began dating. My wife and I still had not really reconnected yet, so obviously she was not my wife at that point. And I had dated a few other girls during my time at Southwestern. However, none of them were really healthy either. I had not dealt with the past yet. And so I did not know how to treat a woman the right way. Now, I was not abusive, but I did not know how to treat them the right way. I was clingy, I was codependent, I was not a good boyfriend. And it was after the third girlfriend I dated there, that I was just like, you know what, I'm done. I'm good being single. And shortly after that is when my wife and I reconnected. There is a couple of verses I want to mention. One in Song of Solomon, 2 verse 7. It says, basically, do not awaken love until it's time. Wait on God. In Psalm 27 verse 14, it says, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. And I promise you, students, it is worth it. Waiting for God's chosen person for you. Amen. Take it from experience, it's not worth it not doing it his way. I've done it not his way, it wasn't good. So, in the summer of 2006, my wife found me on a website. I think it was Adventist Singles Connection. And at that time, it was a fairly new dating website. And she's laughing because of the message she sent me. So she said hi, and I said hi. Now, she remembered the crush I had on her some years before, and what she didn't know was it was still there. But she very quickly shut me down. And she said, don't get any ideas. I'm going for somebody else. So that was that. Now, a few months later, what was that, about 3 months later, I think? That was in July, I want to say. By October, the other girl and I were done. And my sister had said that she was planning a surprise party for our mom. My mom's birthday is October 28th, and it was like a couple of days after that on a Saturday night. And so, I was helping out with the Pathfinder group at a local church. They're not in Keene, but local to Keene. And I was supposed to go on a camp out that weekend with the Adventure Club. Now, I went and talked to the director. I said, look, this is what's going on. I really want to be there for my mom's party. Can I get out of this? And she said, yeah, that's fine. And she had also known that the other girl and I had just broken up, so she's like, yeah, it's fine. You don't have to do this. And so I went to Dallas. Now, I left on, I think it was Friday night, and I was promptly pulled over by a Keene police officer. And they let me go. I think it was because I had a tail light out or something. And so I was getting ready for church that Sabbath morning. And my sister had mentioned that she was going to be there. Now, at that point, I felt my heart skip a beat, and I knew I still had a crush on her. And so I was very happy to hear that she was going to be there. Now, what my wife did not know was that I was going to be there. Remember, we had not seen each other in some years. So that night, I walked into the house. She was already there, and we started talking. Now, I tried my awkward version of flirting, and that was touching her foot with my foot. Don't ask, I don't know why. Now, at that point, she did not like anybody touching her foot. She very quickly said, don't do that again. So we talked the rest of that night. We exchanged phone numbers, and this is before the days of smartphones. And so we also exchanged Yahoo Instant Messenger usernames. I don't know anybody who uses that anymore, so that may tell you how old we are. So after that, we started talking almost daily, and we fell pretty quickly in love. And so a week or two later, she's trying to convince me to invite her out to Keene. And it was an hour's drive. I was trying to be nice. You don't have to come all the way out here. And so, but what I did not know is that when she wants something, she will go for it until she gets it. And so she came out, she convinced me to invite her out, and she came to Keene. Now at that time, we were not the most conservative Adventists. Again, here's some irony. I was a theology major, an Adventist theology major, and we went on a date to Starbucks for coffee. And the plan was to do that and then go to a movie. We never made it past Starbucks, really. We left there too late. It was like, okay, we can't go to the movie, now what do we do? And we ended up walking around the campus of Keene until about 2 or 3 in the morning, just talking the whole time. And because we had not seen each other in so long, and 2, we had this budding romance. And you know, when you first start dating a person, all you want to do is talk to them until 2, 3, 5 o'clock in the morning. And so she left there around 3 o'clock in the morning, and the next weekend I went to see her, and we talked again. We went out to eat, and then we talked again until about 2 or 3 in the morning. And this was when she told me that she was interested in me. Now imagine, I had had a crush on this woman for about 8 years. And up until now, it had always been denied. And so imagine my surprise that this night she tells me, hey, if you ask me to be your girlfriend, I won't say no. And so that's what I did. I asked her to be my girlfriend. A couple of weeks later, we started talking again. Was it 1 week later? It was 1 week later we started talking again about serious things. And we started watching a movie, and she fell asleep. And so I was thinking to myself, you know, I really like this girl. I could see myself married to this girl. And when she woke up, I told her that. She says, well, if you ask me, I won't say no. Now, I don't recommend moving that quickly, but we did have a long friendship as a foundation, so we knew each other. It was not like a Vegas elopement. So by August 5th, 2007, we were married. We've been married for 12 years now. And it has not always been easy, but it has been worth it. Now, that summer, before we got married, she went off to work at CYB when Pastor John was the director there. And I realized I needed a job. And I had sent my resume to about 40-something different conferences across the NAD, mainly in the United States. And none of them had offered me anything. I just got a bunch of letters saying, no thank you. So I needed a job. So I went to Cleburne and I got a job. If you don't know where Cleburne is, it's about 10, 20 minutes away from Keene. And so I started working for an Adventist-owned landscaping business there. Now, by the end of the summer, I had had enough of that job because it was just crazy. And I put in my 2 weeks notice, and that did not help our newly founded marriage. From that point on, for a few years, I was struggling with jobs. Like I either couldn't find one or they didn't last long. Part of the problem was you had, at that point, internet job applications were just starting to get to be a big thing. And that's what everybody wanted. The problem with that is they don't see you face to face, and so I couldn't, that contributed to the job difficulty. The other problem, honestly, is just that I was a video game addict at that point. I was playing games like World of Warcraft, Halo. In fact, when I quit World of Warcraft and Halo, as well as caffeine, cold turkey, mind you, at the same time, I ended up in the emergency room from withdrawals. It was bad. But I get ahead of myself. During our first, maybe our first 2 years of marriage or so, with this job struggle, my wife had people come to her and say, you need to leave him. You need to divorce him and go to somebody else. He needs a job, you need to leave him. One of those people was actually an elder. He said, you know, divorce is not a sin. When God orchestrates the marriage, Satan will come and attack you for it. As quickly as we moved with our marriage, we knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that it was God ordained, because he how do I say it? He worked it out to show us in various ways. And so Satan was out to tear us up. Now, thankfully, we didn't listen to Satan, we stuck in it. So we did have a friend who was also a counselor, and she gave us some marriage counseling. Which, as I understand it now, is illegal to do, I think. It's a conflict of interest, but it helped a lot back then. During the early parts of our marriage, God also began leading us closer to himself, because remember, at this point, I still did not have a consistent, strong relationship with God. I would go months without talking to him. I was also struggling with the fact that I went to school to be a pastor, and I could not find a calling. So I had that to deal with as well. But God began to work on us. Eventually, he began convicting us, hey, you need to give up meat. We were not vegetarians at this point. In fact, I was a bad influence on my wife. She was vegetarian until she married me. And then she began eating chicken. That's not to condemn anybody who eats meat. This is how God has led us. And then he led us back to the vegetarian lifestyle, and then eventually to the vegan lifestyle. He also worked on us with music and books and various entertainment. Over the years, God had led us closer to him. Now, one of our biggest challenges of our marriage was in 2008, we found out that we were expecting a child. And we were excited, but we were also nervous. We were young, we were not ready. And by January or February of 2009, we found out that we had lost that baby. I'm going to tell you, there is no pain like losing a child. Even if it's a miscarriage and you've never seen that child, it hurts like nothing else. To say we were devastated would be an understatement. Now, a few months later, God had worked on us and brought us enough humility that we were ready to try again. And so we did. And fast forward to January 24th of 2010, Savannah was born. I still remember she was a big baby. When the doctors did the sonogram, they said, that's reading is not accurate. It kind of was. I remember the nurse's reaction when they weighed Savannah as a newborn was basically, holy cow, she's huge. She was 10 pounds, 9 ounces. And we were overjoyed. My whole family was. My mom was excited to be a grandmother for the second time over. And we were excited but tired new parents. The job struggle continued. I had a job for about a week through temp services, but I was not used to manual. And I called in one night because my back just hurt too much. Now the thing with temp services is they don't have to give you a reason, they can just call you and tell you your assignment's done. And that's what they did. So about a month after that, I began delivering pizza for Domino's. And it was kind of a fun job, but at the same time, it was another one of those minimal, it was not even minimum wage, it was less than that, and it was a dead-end job. And so the job struggle continued. Because remember, I had gone to school for 4 years. I had had several tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. My struggle was I had nothing to show for it. Now, within a few months of Savannah's birth, we noticed something wasn't right. She was not developing as fast as she should have. She She was having issues that a normal baby didn't have. She wasn't sitting up on time. She was having reflux issues, and the doctor was not doing anything. So we switched doctors, and that helped a lot. But at this point, because of all the stuff that was happening, the challenges with being a new father, with being, with seeing that things weren't working as they should, with the job struggle, it was just all coming at me at once, and I began to be resentful about what was going on. And around 2012 or so, I went back to being a Domino's delivery driver. And I decided a little bit before that it was time to get a master's degree. And I tried that, and I got the master's degree, and then I still couldn't find work that I wanted. So imagine my resentment and my struggle continued. At this point, I had probably $70,000 in student loans, and it has since increased with interest. And I could not find a job for the church. I tried in every conference that we lived in, and I was always ignored. Now imagine you keep trying to go for your dream job, and for some reason or another, you can't. You always get denied. And so that left me with a lot of frustration and anger. It was not until I learned to become satisfied with the jobs that God had me in that God brought me here to JCA. Now, I'm a slow learner. I've only been here a year and a half, so you do the math. I'm a little hard-headed. It was when Savannah was around 2 years old that I began having more spiritual struggles and crises of faith. And I began struggling hard again with the struggle between faith and feeling. I built a network of family and friends that I could text or call for prayer, and they were faithful in offering prayer for me. Eventually we moved to Denver, and that was a lot of fun. I got a reprieve from that trial I just mentioned there. And if I ever get the chance to move back to the mountains, it will take an act of God to keep me from doing that. I love the mountains. But unfortunately, we were only able to live there for a year, and God called us to Illinois. Now, when we flew to Illinois to look for housing, I was not happy. Imagine Rocky Mountains, flat. Illinois is just, it's flat and boring, just like Kansas. And so, but that's where God wanted us, so that's where He took us. It was at this point I met a man named Kirk. He became the best friend I have ever had before or since. Now, unfortunately, he has since left the faith, but God used him in a powerful way to get my attention focused on Him. My friend Kirk was a Bible worker, and this was the time that current events were starting to heat up even more. It was shortly before that if you remember the news, Tony Palmer started ecumenical relations between Protestantism and Catholicism, or rather not started, but put them into overdrive. And so God began using these signs of the times to get my attention. I mean, earthquakes happening where they never had before, political unrest, the tsunamis, all that stuff that was going on, and I was scared out of my gourd. I'm so terrified of being lost. And my friend Kirk would tell me, dude, you've got to focus on Jesus. You're focused on the wrong thing. It was also during this time that I became a school bus driver. I did that for 2 years. Right after we first moved to Illinois, I started studying a controversial topic. That topic was women's ordination. And I don't mention it to bring up controversy, but I had never heard of it before. And so I found out what the controversy was. I found out it was going to be on the 2015 General Conference session. And so I started studying. I need to study this. And so I did. And I found out that I was not obeying God's plan for the family. as a husband and a father, I was not doing what God wanted me to do. And on page, if I can talk right, in Maranatha, page 45, it says, God will arouse his people. If other means fail, heresies will come in among them, which will sift them. And that's what God did with me. He taught me how to be a husband and a father through the scriptures. Now, also during this year, I received a phone call that nobody wants to hear. My mom had a rare blood disorder, and it was not cancer, but it could turn into cancer. So they had to do something. They could choose to do nothing. They could take a pill, or she could get a bone marrow transplant. Now, the bone marrow transplant was the best option for that she had to fix her health and to extend her life. Now, they went ahead with that. Now, about over the next year and a half, she was in and out of the hospital. She progressively got worse and looked worse. She was 60 years old by the time she passed away, but she looked probably 80 because of things like graft versus host disease. Now, the regret that I have during this time is that we were not as close as we were when I was a child. It had been weeks, maybe even months since I had talked to her, and then she's gone. Imagine that phone call. I had started my school bus route that morning, and I got a text message from my stepdad saying she's going to be gone soon. And by that afternoon, when I was about to start my afternoon route, I got another text message saying, we're pulling life support. Do you want to talk to her one more time? And so I talked to her one more time. She was in a medically induced coma, but within 10 minutes of pulling the plug, she was gone. I had to go into my boss. I said, look, my mom is gone. I have to go to Texas. So we took the next few days and we went to Texas. Now on the highway, my habit was to call my parents to let them know we were on the way. I wanted to call my mom and realized, oh yeah, I can't. There's nothing heart-wrenching like that. There's nothing heart-wrenching like feeling that you messed up your relationship and now you can't fix it. No, I have since tried to deal with those things, and I have to a large degree, but it's still not fun to remember. And so that put my desire to go back to family kind of into overdrive. We were 18 hours away from family, which took us about 2 days worth of driving to get to Texas from Northeast Illinois. We lived about an hour and a half north of Chicago, about 20 minutes away from Kenosha, as Lance mentioned last night. And so we went to the funeral. We went back to Illinois, went on with life as usual. Almost a year later, I called my stepdad and I said, my wife and I are going to renew our vows. Our 10-year anniversary, we want to renew our vows. Can you come? He said, yeah, I would love to. And he came. And little did I know that would be the last time I saw him alive. Exactly 1 year after losing my mom, that was August 29, 2016. August 29, 2017, I lost my stepdad in a motorcycle accident. You talk about Satan trying to tear you apart. He was going after me, after my family. Now, he was on a ride with my brother. They were on their respective motorcycles, and we're not sure if he hit the deer or if the deer hit him, but they hit each other, and the rest is history. And so, at that time, I did not handle loss well. I yelled at God, I screamed at God, I hit things. And up until recently, it was not something that I dealt with. And so, at that time, the pastor of the church there in Illinois, he had come to mourn with our family like few other people have. His name was Jose Medina. he was a big help to our family. And not only that, but he took me under his wings to mentor me in ministry. He actually, he was the only person there who ever called me by the title of pastor, even though I wasn't one. But he believed in my calling even more strongly than I did at times. And he asked me to help him with evangelism programs. Now, to fast forward a little bit, we moved here to Texas the following summer. And as the pastor said, they helped us move the moving truck down. And so my first year as a teacher was rough. I didn't know what I was doing, and it was hard. And so students, if I ever took it out on you, please forgive me. So the challenge was I still felt kind of alone. And so I started praying, and I said, God, please send me friends. And I specifically wanted male friends because there's just something about having that male camaraderie. Now I do have a best friend who lives in Guyana, but that's hours of flying away. And so I wanted local friends. And so eventually God had brought us those friends. Some of you know Kirsten Elliott, and earlier last year we started developing a friendship, and now she's one of our absolute best friends. Another one of those friends is Jason and Gina. Last year around this time I was just very depressed, and when God took us on the mission trip to La Vida, that's an interesting story because I fought God tooth and nail on that. I did not want to go. And the problem was, Miss Lynn didn't have anybody else to drive the bus. I was the only person licensed and experienced to do so. And so I had to. But I fought God. And it turned out to be one of the best experiences of my life. And I met Jason there and Jenny and their whole family. And they kind of blew me away there because I told them, I said, look, I can't do hard labor like I used to. My shoulders won't let me. And Jason says, no problem. You can do other stuff. That's not a problem. And I just saw the love of God in this family like I've seen it in few other families. And so, Jason, I truly believe you are an answer to my prayer for a friend. And Lance, you too. And I want to end with this quote and a few other statements. From Maranatha, page 9, it says, none but Christ can fashion anew the character that has been ruined by sin. It was not until I started discovering who I am in Jesus that sin started losing its appeal to me. If you've never done that study, I went over this with the juniors and seniors on Monday in religion class. Go through Ephesians chapter 1 and 2 and figure out all the identifiers that God describes you with. Just to go through the list, I am chosen by God. I am wanted. When I grew up, I didn't know my biological father loved me. I didn't know he had fought for me, so I thought I was not wanted. I have since learned that yes, he did love me and he did fight for me, but God, he chose me. He wants me. I'm adopted as a son by Jesus Christ himself. I am accepted in him. I am redeemed through his blood. I am forgiven. I am in him. I am identified as his. I am made alive by Jesus. I am being saved by his grace. I am his workmanship. And so many more. Jesus himself is my peace. He doesn't just give me peace. He is my peace. I'm reconciled to him. I have access to the Father. I'm not a stranger anymore. I am not fatherless anymore. Now, I still have a long ways to go, yes. I still make mistakes. But because of God, he has me on the right track. I'm not who I used to be. I am his. And sin just does not have the same appeal. That pain that I held on to, that negativity that I was obsessed with, just does not have the same appeal. And so if you have not given Jesus a try, please give him a try. We don't have much time in this world. Burning events are heating up like they never have before. If you have not given your heart to him, or if you've walked away from him, please return. Please give him your heart tonight. Let's pray. Dear Father, you have worked so powerfully in my life. I know I still have a long way to go, but you'll get me there because you promised you would. You will complete the good work you began in me. And I pray that those here who have not accepted you or who have maybe walked away from you will give you the same chance. Please be with us tonight as we go to our homes, as we go to our homework. Please give us your peace.